Life is all about lessons. Every single time we go through experiences in life, we always have lessons to learn. But the truth is, and what we need to ask ourselves is, have we learnt the lesson? Have we actually learnt the lesson? Because life will bring you the same situation over and over again until you learn the actual lesson within the circumstance. Have we learnt it? If you keep experiencing the same thing over and over again, that means you haven't learnt the lesson. If you keep acting in the same way, then you haven't learnt the lesson. How you can tell you've actually learnt the lesson is if you're acting from a state of the lesson learned, not acting from the trauma of the lesson. Those are two different ways that you can tell if you've actually learnt the lesson. Are you acting the same way? Are you acting from the trauma of the lesson? Or are you actually acting from the lesson learned? Because life will always have lessons. Life will always life. Life will always be lifing. And all we can say and all we can do is learn from our lessons. All we can do is learn. That's it. And a lot of the time, people don't learn their lesson the first time. It might be the second time, it might be the third time, it might be the fourth time they finally learn, okay, I need to actually switch things up and do things differently. Sometimes it's not very easy to learn the first time. We might miss things, we might think it's a fluke, we might think that this is not something that we need to learn from yet. But when we see a pattern, when we see a theme, then we're like, okay, we have to actually learn the lesson and act differently, because every time the lesson happens, it actually gets worse. I'll give you an example of this. In the Bible, Moses was trying to free the Israelites. He was directed from God. God sent Moses to the Israelites, not to the Israelites, to the Egyptians, to Pharaoh, who was the head of the Egyptians, to let the Israelites go. So Moses would go there and Pharaoh would say, no, I'm not letting these people go. No, I'm not letting these people go. No, I'm not letting these people go. So God sent 10 plagues to Egypt, and every single plague got worse. First, it started with darkness. Then it escalated to the firstborn child dying of every single family in Egypt. So the truth is, when we don't learn our lesson, it actually escalates. The lesson comes back, and sometimes it comes back worse, more intense, stronger. And we have to, so it's so important that we learn our lesson and we actually sit back and reflect on our lives and okay, how can I do things differently? In the example of Moses and Pharaoh could have actually just let the Israelites go because that's what God wanted. But no, he was like, I'm being stubborn. I don't want to learn my lesson here. I will have my way. And sometimes we need to let God have his way. That is how we learn the lesson. Us having our way is how we don't learn the lesson. That's how we learn the same lesson on repeat. The same thing happens on repeat until finally God gives us such a strong lesson after it happens many times and it gets worse. For example, in the case of Pharaoh and the worst plague, which is the death of his own son, he was like, okay, you guys can finally go. The Israelites can now go. Finally, I'm letting God have his way. After all that had happened, after 10 plagues later, and this doesn't just happen to Pharaoh, this happens to us, where the same situation will happen again and again. We have the same relationship again and again, same person in a different body. We have the same circumstance coming again and again in our lives, and we don't learn it. We don't sit and think, okay, what is God trying to tell me here? What am I meant to take forward? How can I step into the lesson learned and walk in the lesson learned rather than walking in my stubbornness or walking in the trauma of the lesson rather than learning it and evolving past it and doing the work to alchemize it and get through it. So it's so important that we learn our lessons in life and not just learn lessons on repeat, because that is literally what God and the universe and circumstances, it will just come on repeat until you learn it. So we need to get better at learning lessons and learning them fast, and understanding life and understanding how the world works. When God wants you to learn a lesson, when something is meant to alchemize you, to improve you, to evolve you to the next level, and you refuse to accept it, you're stubborn, you're stuck in your ways, you're wallowing in the trauma, it will keep happening until you heal the trauma, until you release the stubbornness, until you open yourself up to allow God to do something and improve your life. And it just ends up this way. So we must learn our lesson. Learn your lesson. Learn to sit down with yourself and slow down. If you don't slow down, you're literally going to keep learning the same lesson again and again and again on repeat. And you'll keep doing the same thing again and again, acting the same way over again and again, instead of acting from the lesson learned. So let's act from the lesson learned. Let's not act from the same thing over and over again, because all we do is incur the same circumstance, incur the same situations over and over again into our lives, until we're like, oh, this is actually a trend. Because a lot of the time we might not even see that we have trends in our lives that are running the show, that are dominating the space, until they get worse. Each lesson gets worse each time, you know? So all we can do is learn our lessons. So this is why I did this video. Have you learned the lesson yet? Have you learned the lesson of the circumstances in your life currently? Have you learned the lesson? Have you gone to the root? Because that's also a very important part. What is the root of what has led you to come to this lesson, to this circumstance that has led to this lesson? What's the root? We have to go to the root a lot of the time. Journaling it out, allowing ourselves to unpack the depth of it so we can actually learn and see, okay, this is what got me here first. This is what I need to do now to make sure I'm not in the same situation again, to allow myself to learn this lesson again and again. Another thing is releasing resistance. Allowing ourselves to actually think differently and be differently. For example, in the Bible example I presented, Pharaoh refused to think differently until something shocked him to the point where he had to think differently. Let's delight ourselves in thinking differently without hitting the rock bottom and hitting the worst case scenario. Let's evaluate our lives when little things happen rather than big things happen. This actually helps us to alchemize things and learn from things quicker. When we notice little things rather than letting them escalate to big things where we can't even look away now. Now we literally have to face it, and we have to face it now. And it might not be a convenient time for you to face it. So yes, let's live from the lesson learned. Let's release stubbornness, let's release resistance, and allow ourselves to grow, heal, evolve, and be better people each day. Evolve, like just be the best versions of ourselves, because we're never going to get to the point that God wants us to get to if we're not going to learn the lessons, if we're not going to heal out of what God wants us to heal out of, if we're not going to alchemize it, if we're not going to open ourselves up to learn the lesson. So that's my question for you today. Have you learned the lesson from all the experiences that you've been through? From your childhood, even from now, even from yesterday, even from this morning, even from this evening, whatever time it is now, have you learned the lesson? Because the lesson will keep coming. Do you want the lesson to keep coming to you? Do you want to keep experiencing the same thing over and over again? I don't know about you, but I don't. It gets so draining. You have to wake up and realize, wait, I need to change. I'm the one who needs to change so that the circumstance can change. You can't expect the circumstance to change without you changing first. So you have to go in and change yourself, heal yourself, work on yourself, journal it out, let it out, go in, tap in, and connect with God. And you'll be able to evolve, develop past the circumstance, past the lesson, and stand in the lesson learned. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video today. As always, follow your purpose, be a light in this world, and I'm sending you lots of love and peace.